What's up, everybody? This is the Husband Coach Show, and I'm your host, Jason Schnitzer. Thanks for tuning in. Here is your next episode. All right, guys, what I've got for you today is something that I'm realizing to be a common theme in my coaching business. And that is, why is it so difficult for men to ask for help? And it's something that I've kind of been chewing on, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of it now. And especially, like, this is in particular as it pertains to, relationships. And in general too, it's like there's a joke, men won't ask for directions, right? They'll not ask for where things are in the store, all the things. But this specifically has to do with intimate relationships. And a good way that I like to think about it is, or at least this is kind of an analogy I came up with. So, generally from a societal standpoint, it's not necessarily radically or widely accepted that it's okay for men to have certain feelings, right? And experience those feelings, show those feelings. Generally speaking, it's like, buck up, kid, suck it up, don't be a baby, you're a tough boy, you're a big boy, don't feel that thing. The problem with that is, those emotions don't go anywhere, right? It's like, you can't control emotions, but you can either experience them, suppress them, repress them, or reject them. It's like one of those things. And if you spend most of your life doing the latter, which is generally what we as men do, suppressing, repressing, or avoiding, you're not going to get a lot of practice actually being able to navigate those emotions. And where that basically comes to a head for most people is in long-term intimate relationships, aka marriage for most people. And so getting back to kind of like the analogy that I like to use is, the way I think about it is, it's like, imagine spending most of your life knowing that eventually you're going to be in the Super Bowl, but not practicing at all for it. And then going into a Super Bowl event and having the other team expect you to know how to play the game, right? And expect to be good at the game. And in this case, it's like your long-term intimate relationship, you're gonna have a partner that's gonna expect you to be able to like pitch and catch and throw the ball and run the ball and all those things. And, there's high stakes, there's a lot on the line, there's a lot of expectations. Not only from the other person, but like for yourself, from society, from your family, all the things. So not only do you have zero practice or minimal practice with regards to like digging into this stuff for yourself, but there's a whole lot of expectations. And like why it's so difficult for a lot of men to ask for help, it's because, or like my take on it, is a lot of times like you're like, what are things that we as men try to do, right? A lot of times it's competence. It's like when you are good at something, you typically, you rise up in your company, you have success in business, you're successful in sports, you have more friends, you're more attractive to women. So like a lot of times men equate competence and their self-worth. A lot of times those get like closely tied together, which is why it's like so hard to admit defeat. It's so hard to like sometimes overcome your ego when you're not good at something, right? So without the right mindset in the way of framing, asking for help and seeking out help and mentorship and coaching and all that stuff, it's really easy to kind of get looped into like the lone wolf, like I can figure this out, and either that or blaming, right? It's not me, it's them. They're the ones that actually have to change. I don't have to change, because in order to admit that I might have to change, you'd have to swallow the pill of not being competent. And again, when competence is placed at such a high priority or a high, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, we'll just call it a high priority in your life, asking for help can sometimes be at the risk of popping that bubble of ego. And what comes along with that? Difficult emotions. And again, when you're used to avoiding as opposed to experiencing certain emotions, like that makes perfect sense. The problem is as smart as you think you are, and this was me at some point, you know, especially if you're a highly competent person, it's like, oh yeah, this is just one more thing that you can figure out. Well, you can't think your way through like a genuine, deep connection with your partner, your wife, your fiance, girlfriend, whatever. It's like there are aspects of you that need to basically unburden and step aside and allow other parts of you to take the wheel and actually start feeling things. And a lot of times, again, this is like deeply rooted back from our childhood of, you know, what was acceptable for your caretakers, for you to experience with regards to emotions, right? If you were told that certain feelings weren't okay to experience, then your working model of the world might be, wow, if I am in distress or if I have these big, difficult emotions, whether that be frustration, anger, grief, sadness, you name it, then I am a burden to other people. And it's not safe for me to express myself in those ways because look what it does to other people, right? And then we can internalize that as kind of like an I'm bad thing for having these feelings and emotions and a shameful thing. Which is it's a deadly cycle to get into, very toxic cycle to get into, because it just leads to shutdown and isolation, really, right? When we have an internal working model of an I'm bad, a shame-coded internal feelings about ourselves, it's like, then what happens is like we repress those emotions. But what happens when you repress the emotions is, you know, they just keep on getting bigger and it's like they fester. It's like having them in a pressure cooker, but you're caught in this weird space of like, if I say something, I'm a burden, but I'm also stuck with these really big emotions. And you can see like, as you know, years go by, sometimes decades go by, and you're carrying around all this weight. At some point, everybody hits a point where it's like, okay, I need help, right? And why that's, again, especially difficult for men is because it becomes what's more painful, right? The pain of needing help, right? It's almost like the ego pain, or the actual pain of the years and years and years of all this built up shit that we've been expected to carry without any help. And like, that's just too much. That becomes way more painful than maybe a little ego death that we have when we actually reach out and ask for help. And what's crazy is, and why I love, you know, martial arts so much, and the idea of always having a white belt mentality, always being a learner, is that the people that are, and this is just like so, it's such a different mindset shift from what I see a lot of people out there. You know, it's like, oh yeah, it's like the competence mindset. It's like, oh, if I'm good at something, then people can't make fun of me, right? There's a whole other that aspect of it in there where it's like, you know, a lot of times boys especially experience bullying. If you're not good at something and you're trying, you can get made fun of. And that's like, what does that do? Well, that kills your desire to try anything, right? But going back to what I was talking about with the idea of a white belt mindset and why I love martial arts so much, it's because it's like, in order to be good at anything, you have to risk looking like a fool. And that is like, gosh, Michael Jordan at one point sucked at basketball. LeBron James sucked at basketball. Tom Brady sucked at football. And it's like, even though they might have been good for their age, they, like in the grand scheme of things, they're still terrible compared to like who they eventually realized themselves to be. And it's so easy to forget that, I think. just when you're starting to like bringing this back to the idea of asking for help, it's like all of those people had so much help. And when you have the right mentorship and you have the right guides and the right coaches around you, it's like that is the mentality shift that changes people's lives forever, because there's so much relief that comes with not having to know. And when it's okay to not know, and it's okay to learn, and it's okay to, be a white belt, and it's okay to try something and mess up, and like, oh my gosh, instead of people making fun of you, you actually have support and people encouraging you and believing in you and, really seeing your potential and your highest best self. All of a sudden, it's a game changer, dude. And this is like part of my mission, is providing that support to men in their deepest relationships. And a lot of times the hardest things to do is just sit there and actually feel the shit that's there, which paradoxically allows you to accomplish and move forward into all the things that you want to do. And at least that's been my experience. That's been my clients' experiences. When you finally reach out for that support, and of course, who you reach out to support matters. There are so many coaches out there, therapists, psychiatrists, all the above, especially coaches, and especially in the men's space, that are just like, frankly, hopped up on way too much TRT and just want to like berate you and like tell you that all you need is more discipline and, beat you into being the best version of you. And it's like, it's, at least for me and from what I'm seeing, if berating and belittling and criticizing and like more disciplining yourself into the best version of you was a realistic, long-term, sustainable approach, it's like we'd all be the best versions of ourselves, right? It's like that's usually everybody's go-to, is to be like, come on, yeah, you can do better, and that again ties back into, a little bit of the shame, right? It's that inner critic is more of a shame-based approach or a guilt-based approach. And what I'm recommending you to do is to start becoming a better self-parent to you. And what I mean by that is like, if you talked to your friends or your family or your coworkers like you talk to yourself, it's like, dude, you would not have any friends. Your family would stop talking to you, and your coworkers would never eat lunch with you again. So there are steps you can take to start to shift that inner voice. There's a good reason why it's there, right, in the first place. But part of this process is to start to shift that inner critic, right? And you want to befriend that inner critic part of you and understand, why it's there, where it got its job and it feels like it needs to be a drill sergeant for you, and start shifting that to more of a compassionate, understanding self-parent. And in that work, all of a sudden you can start to realize why you are the way that you are. You can even understand better why it was maybe really difficult for you to ask for help. You can understand like why you're showing up in your marriage the way that you are, your relationship the way that you are, and how your childhood and your past is maybe affecting that. And start to identify, it's like, okay, I'm showing up like this, but I really want to show up like this. And it's within that gap and the difference in the behavior of what you are exhibiting that you can really start to get to work on the root issues as to like why you're having your struggles in your relationship in the first place. So as with all of this couples work, right? Because I don't do couples work, I do men's work. I do one-on-one work with you. it all starts with the self. All roads lead back to yourself. It's like people ask all the time, well, like they ask about couples counseling versus coaching. And it's like couples counseling has its merits, but most relationship dynamics aren't because couples can't figure things out. It's the reasons why you are showing up the way that you're showing up. And that energy, that mentality, that state that you're in is what really impacts the relationship and the marriage. And the cool part for you is, if you're a dude watching this, statistics show that just by the men taking action or the man taking action in the relationship, I think it's something like 81% of men who are able to step up and learn how to develop self-control, regulate their emotions, figure this shit out so that they can properly attune to their wife. 81% are the ones with the happy marriages. So hopefully this was helpful for you and it sheds a little more light onto maybe if you have a difficult time asking for help. It's like, well, dude, I get it, bro. It's like you've been expected to do things that are far beyond your capacity. And hopefully that takes a little bit of the shame away and opens the door at the potential opportunity to, find a good mentor. Somebody to guide you, get you from point A to point B way the hell faster than you would on your own. I know when I busted out of my lone wolf era or chapter of my life, that's when I saw the most exponential growth in my life. Getting a coach was the best thing that I ever did, and that's part of why I'm on here offering all this free advice, offering all of this information, because it's something that has been super beneficial to me, my marriage. I know that it's going to leave a lasting impact on my son and the people around me. So if you're interested in learning more about how to work with me, you can check out jasonschnitzercoaching.com. You can find me on Jason Schnitzer Coaching at Instagram if you want more of this free content. Check out the show notes. It'll all be in there. But yeah, and if you're a lady listening to this, hopefully it gives you a little more empathy for kind of like what us dudes go through in our life, day-to-day basis, all the things. So thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next week.